Welcome back. Now that you have a more complex object graph, you have to rework the app a bit to handle it. First off, you'll need to go to your simulator and either delete the app or reset your simulator. Basically, you want to get rid of the underlying app. Any reminders you created prior to the last video are incompatible with your new data model. Remember, instances of reminder are now required to have an associated list. So if you build and run, the app will try to look for that list and crash instead. If this were code running in production, a real app so to speak, you would go about this in a completely different manner by undertaking a model migration. But for our purposes, deleting the app suffices. Next, you're going to grab the starter files for this video. I took the liberty of modifying the UI to present a reminders list view up front. So now you have this new view. And then from in here, you can drill down into individual reminders. So let's build and run the app and make sure everything is as expected. You should see a list of lists when it loads, and it should all be full of placeholder data. Right now, if you tap on any of these lists, nothing happens, and that's because you need to get it to work. So first up, let's add the functionality to create a list. You implemented the logic in the last video, so all you need to do is wire it together. Navigate to Reminder List Create view. And at the very bottom, you should see a Save button defined in the navigation bar items. Replace the comment with the function you defined earlier. Nice and easy. Now navigate back to Reminder List view, and let's replace the placeholder data with actual reminder lists that you save. So the last time you did this, you created a static property on the reminder type that returns a fetch request, but there's another way that you can achieve this, as we looked at, using a property wrapper. So at the top of the reminder list view struct, let's add an environment, or after the environment property, let's add a fetch request. As I mentioned earlier, this is no different from what you did before. Instead of using the property wrapper, you created an instance of the underlying struct fetch request, and then access the wrapped value property on the property observer to get those returned results. Here you're using the property wrapper, well, as a property wrapper. There's certainly a bit more hand-wavy magic here because the declaration is a fetch request, but the property and resulting type is fetch results, but it works the exact same way. Now in the for each view, you can replace the placeholder data with the fetch results. And inside the closure, use the reminder list title property to display the title. Let's see if this worked. Build and run the app. The view should now be empty. Okay, everything looks good. Tap on the plus button in the top right to create a new list and enter a title. So if this were any other year, we'd say something like WWDC trip, and we'll hit save. And now you should see a new reminder list added to the view. Awesome. When you tap on one of these rows to select a list, you should navigate to a screen that shows you all the reminders for that particular list, but we need to wire that up. So to navigate to the reminders view, you need to wrap the row in a navigation link. So replace this H stack and its contents with, so we'll get rid of that and we'll say navigation link. And this has a destination of reminders view. You're specifying the reminders view as the destination, but that won't work as it is. Right now, the reminders view is set up to fetch all reminders, but you want to restrict that to just the reminders that are associated with the list you tapped on. That's where the relationship you defined comes into play. So let's navigate to reminders view and add a new stored property. So at the very top, you're going to add a stored property for the reminder list that this reminder is a part of. You're not going to give it a value because you want to pass this in when you tap on the row. We'll need to fix the preview code so that it compiles. So we'll get rid of this, and we'll first need access to the manage object context. Once you have that, you can create a new reminder list and inject it into the view. Okay, now back in reminders list view, or rather reminder list view, we can pass the reminder list through to the underlying reminders view. Next, you'll need to figure out how to fetch the reminders associated with this particular list. Before you can do that though, you need to modify how you save reminders to make sure you are saving it to a list. Navigate to Reminder plus Core Data Properties, and earlier you created a create with method that takes a bunch of arguments that lets you create a reminder. You're going to add one more in here, so after priority, you're going to say we want to add this in a list. And then at the very bottom here, after the reminder is configured, you can now add it to the list. You'll get an error when you do this, and that's because, well, we didn't add a list property to model the new reminder object. Remember, we generated the code for the reminder list, but we did not modify reminder. So let's go ahead and add that as well. So all you need to do is scroll up here and add it to the bottom. And now it should compile. Back in create reminder view, let's define a reminder list property. Remember, when we create a reminder, we also need to have a reference to the list it's part of so that we can add it to the method that we just updated. So let's define a reminder list property that we initialize this view with. So up at the very top, we'll say let reminder list. And now over here, you should have an error, and we can fix that by passing the list we just defined. Again, you're going to need to update the preview code, and this is just a lot of boilerplate. So let's head back to the reminders view, and you can just copy it from here. So we'll grab everything and then go back to create reminder view. We'll paste this in. And then instead of returning a reminders view, we're going to return a create reminders view with the new reminder list. All that's left to do is pass this reminder list all the way through. And again, this is just a bit of boilerplate code that you need to update because your model was updated. So first we'll go to the new reminder button view. Again, at the top, you'll need that stored property. And then here where we're creating the reminder view, let's go ahead and pass it through. And then yet again, you'll need to update the preview. You should have that code still copied onto your clipboard, so you can do Command V to paste. Oh, well, that didn't work. So, go ahead and jump to this definition, and it should be down here. You can grab all this, go back, paste it in, and then pass it through. And we'll need a return here. All right, so that's fixed. And what's going on here? Oh, we need a self, so that's fixed. And then next we need to go to reminders view. Here we have a new reminder button view. We already have the reminders list defined at the top. We can just pass that through the argument now. All right, let's build and run the app. And now you can tap into the list and then create a reminder. We'll give this a priority value of high and hit save. Now, when you hit save, the reminder should automatically be added to the list. But the implementation is not correct. Here's why. So let's go back to the list view and we'll add a new list. Here I'm going to say everyday stuff. Once you hit save, then the reminder list appears in the view. Tap into it and you should see the airline reminder in here. Clearly, you're still fetching all reminders and not just the ones you need for a given list. Now, what you could do is you could navigate back to reminders view, and in the for each here, change it from reminders to reminder list.reminders. Now when you build and run the app, we have an error. Oh, and that's because reminders here is a set. Let's go back and change this. So we're going to reminder list. We need to change that. So in your boilerplate code, this might be a set still, right? And you're going to change that to an array like we did earlier. All right, so build succeeded. And now we should see the airline tickets in the WWDC list and nothing here. Okay, cool. You can also add a new reminder here, and when you save it, it should appear in just this list. Unfortunately, there's still a lingering bug. So if we go back to the WW list and we tap on this reminder to mark it as complete, it doesn't actually disappear from the list. Now, this seems to be an issue with how Core Data and SwiftUI work together. So previously, the reason that it all worked was because you were using a fetch request directly on the reminder entity to drive the view logic. So if we go back to the reminders view here, right? So we changed this. This used to be, if I undo the change here, this was the result of executing the fetch request. Whereas now, when the view state changed, SwiftUI, when we used the fetch request, SwiftUI and Core Data work together to refetch new reminders or remove completed ones, update the view, and do all of that magic. Now in this case, you're not actually using the fetch request on the reminder entity to drive the view. You're using the underlying reminder list and then the relationship defined on that list to populate the view. For whatever reason, it seems like Core Data is not propagating a change to SwiftUI when the change is on an entity that is defined through a relationship. There are workarounds, so to speak, and in the next video, let's look at how predicates can help us solve the problem.